Well, look at that friendly face. There he is, one half of Campbell. Oh, stop. I'm getting rolling. I'm trying to introduce the show. This guy's pointing to that green stands for garbage or Packers if you prefer. The Green Bay Packers are in the playoffs. The Chicago Bears are not in the playoffs. Who's your daddy? The Packers are my daddy. Are you happy? Are you
I,
happy?
I love that. That's a great clip.
That's Shaun Campbell. He's the president of Green Bay Packers Nation Montreal chapter. Don't worry, hockey fans. Oh, this guy's decked head to toe in Packer green and yellow this morning. Um, and I know people lose their minds when I start talking NFL, so I want to get away from that as quickly as possible. This is like people want their Habs talk. They
Let's
want it
go.
fast. They want it fast and furious. So the Montreal Canadiens coming off a 2-1 shootout loss to the Dallas Stars, finally losing on the second end of a back-to-back. They were 3-0 in the second game of back-to-back. So, like, schedule makers have been rough on the Canadiens. The Canadiens have answered the call, and they have beat more or less the who's who. And this stat blew my mind, Shaun. Montreal 12-5-1 since December the 3rd. That is tied for the fifth most points in the NHL. And the Canadiens are very much in the mix. Good morning. How's it going? And let's dip into the Canadiens and talk to me about what you saw from this week. What an incredible week with wins over Vancouver, beating Washington, and taking a point in a shootout loss to Dallas.
Yeah, don't you think that they should probably play around with the schedule and just if you beat Dallas or you beat Washington, you beat these teams that are ahead of you in the standings, there should be a bonus point like Colorado or
Yeah.
Vegas or Tampa or Florida. Like if you go back since Christmas, and I know we're looking back at the last week, but if you look at the gauntlet of what the Canadians went through and what they were able to do, it was so impressive. And it's almost unfortunate that they only pick up 2 points in those victories along the way. And just in this past week, the back-to-back, the Vancouver game,
Yep.
hardest thing about the Vancouver game, you just came back from the road trip. They had the day off on Sunday because they flew back that day, and then they didn't even have a skate on the morning of Vancouver. They went straight to the rink. It was a later start, and they were able to pull that off. They got a whole week of rest. Even Wednesday was an optional practice, get the midseason review from Ken Hughes, and then you got to travel again. You just got home, and then you got to travel again. And Dobes comes in, you beat the Capitals. Doesn't matter how or what you win, you get the 2 points. And then you got to come back against Dallas. This last week of travel alone has been so chaotic for the Canadiens. And the fact that they picked up 5 out of 6 points.
Dude, yeah. Yeah. Pat McAfee clap through and through. We'll talk about the balance. Patrick Laine making his return to the lineup Saturday night, and of course,
Yeah.
Laine does what Laine does. He scores on the power play. He's got 9 goals. All of them have come on the man advantage. It took a 5-on-3 for the Canadiens to get it going. But from that Saturday game, was that an illustration of the Canadiens having tired legs? Dallas 17 shots in the first. Washington had 17 for the entirety of that Friday night loss to the Canadiens in their barn. But what's the takeaway from the shootout loss to Dallas on Saturday before we move on?
I look. I don't know if it's going to be a tired legs, and you could probably equate that. I know the team won't, but you and I can sit afar and say, "Hey, I understand why they kind of came out slow in that first period." Let's just
Yeah.
say that Dallas is a good team, and they were on a roll. They're still on a roll. They got the shootout win, so they're able to get the 2 points, and that's 7 straight wins for the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are a good hockey team, so
Yeah.
when they started off strong it was because the Dallas Stars are good. It wasn't because the Canadians were tired. I don't want to go down that path. I don't think I'm going to buy that path. The the second part, which was really interesting, I was the second period. Loved the Canadian second period.
Agreed.
I thought it was outstanding. They came out, they said, "We're going to go out, we're going to do this, let's go." And they went and they attacked Dallas. They didn't wait and see. Now they scored, and then Ben scored. The third period, I'm watching the third. There was a little bit of excitement, but that was a third period of both teams going, let's go get our point. East, West, let's see what happens in an overtime. But I was very impressed. And even in that first period, when I even felt that Montembeault was fighting the puck, looking left after making a save, looking behind him, do I have it, do I not? But that only took about 8 minutes, and then he started to zone in.
Cool.
And the last time we saw Montembeault was the Vancouver game, which the Canadians won, but it wasn't the best version of Montembeault that we've seen. But to me, I love the way that he refocused within the game, and he was one of the reasons why they picked up a point.
You know, problems can come in a good way and a bad way. This is a good one. Jakub Dobes' attitude. I loved his answer to Martin McGuire on Friday after he beat Washington when he was asked by McGuire about an intimidating environment in Washington. He's like, dude, I play in Montreal. I play for the Canadiens. We play at the Bell Center. No arena better prepares us to play anywhere else than playing at the Bell Center. I can't wait to see this kid in Montreal. I can't wait for his first Habs home start. I think they got it right. Give the kid Washington. Sam Montembeault has earned the right to play a home game on Saturday, but that's going to change. Montreal's week sets up this way: Tuesday, Thursday, Utah, Dallas. Late starts, 9 and 8 p.m. Then it's the Mighty Leafs on Saturday night at the Bell Center. And then it's the not so mighty New York Rangers Sunday night at the Bell Center. Walk me through how you think this goaltending maps out this week.
I think that Dobes is getting the Leafs.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
And there's a little bit of history behind this, because I think you're going to get Montembeault for the week on the road. Now it depends what happens in Utah.
Gotcha.
So if you're not happy, then you can make the change, and then he could get then Dobes could get Dallas. But I think it's going to be Montembeault in Utah. And if I'm just going to play this out, is the fact that you're in a different time zone and you only have 1 day of rest before the next day that you're back home. So going from Dallas and then travel, and then you have the game. So you're going to go Montembeault, then Dobes. I think it's Montembeault, Dobes, and then Montembeault goes on Sunday. You want to maximize these players.
Monty's going to play 3 times this week.
Yeah, you're in a world of trust, and just who is Dobes faced? Panthers, Colorado, Capitals. Oh, you're not going to let him have the Leafs? Let him have the Leafs. Yeah. Does it really matter?
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because, in the early blushes, the guy's 3-0. He's allowed 3 goals on 74 shots this season. His goals against is under 1. Yes, I mean, like you just said, and I was thinking about this as it relates to the Canadian schedule, all the teams that they have managed to face, right? To your point, Florida, Tampa Bay, Vegas, Colorado, Vancouver. Vancouver's a good road team. Washington's best team in the Eastern Conference, right there with Toronto. Dallas, one of the top teams in the Western Conference. The one team the Montreal Canadiens haven't faced in this murderer's row of opposition are the mighty first place Toronto Maple Leafs. So I love that line of thinking. I love the way you're going with this. And I don't really see it changing either. Again, all situational. If Montembeault looks terrible against Utah, maybe that changes things. And I'm curious to get your insight on now that the Montreal Canadiens have embarked on the second half of the season with that Saturday game against Dallas. I want to talk about the first half, why the Montreal Canadiens have the 5th most points of any team in the entirety of the NHL since December the 3rd. Let's talk about that in just a few minutes. But before we move on, and we will get into Lane Hudson deeper into this conversation, but I don't know what the ceiling is for this guy. I left Friday's game against Washington thinking, man, was that Lane Hudson's best game in the NHL? And then I thought to myself, how many times have I asked that question? I mean, the Montreal Canadiens obviously have a very, very special and a very, very confident player. My question to you about Hudson is this: can you apply what he's done to anybody else? Can Juraj Slafkovsky, can Kirby Dach, could Josh Anderson, can these guys that have had turbulent times in Montreal, can they look at Lane Hudson and learn anything, or is he just so unique?
He is very unique. It's funny. I love the opportunity that I get to go down to practice in Brossard and be there early, and I love I love getting there. I get the show's at 10. I'll roll in around 8:30, 8:45. I'll practice at 10:30, and I always take my notes of who shows up on the ice first. And we were there last Wednesday, this past week, and it was Nick Suzuki that came out first. I was shocked. Not that it was Nick Suzuki, but it wasn't Lane Hudson. And then all the forwards came out, and then I realized after a couple minutes, oh, this is just an optional practice. And I'm like, man, it's an optional practice, and Lane Hudson's on the ice. This guy loves being on the ice. So the thing they can learn is maybe that he loves being on the ice. He loves working on his game. He'll work with the coaches, but he also works on his own. But I'll tell you this, Uri Slafkovsky's the same. He's on the ice all the time, all the time. And it's not for everybody. It works for Lane Hudson to be a rink rat, but there are some players that they don't need to be a rink rat. Maybe at the young age, you want to see that. You want to see that eagerness. But I'm not going to say that what works for Lane Hudson is going to work for Uri Slafkovsky. And there will be a hiccup along the way here with Lane Hudson. It's almost kind of like everything he does is, oh, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. Oh, he turned over the puck. It's okay. It's Lane Hudson. Like, it just that that's the case. He'll make the same turnover as Mike Matheson, and no one says boo. But then Matheson has to be traded. He'll make the exact same turnover. One of my favorite things about the game against Dallas. Jumped up in the rush.
Yeah.
Tried to do something special. Didn't work. Nothing happened. Maybe he should have passed it off earlier. It doesn't matter. First guy back on the back check.
Yes. He did that a few times Saturday.
Yeah.
I noticed.
Oh, I love it. And it's one of the things it reminds me of, and I'm going to give you the perfect example. And I don't know if he'll ever be at this offensive weapon, but maybe. Erik Karlsson of the Ottawa Senators was one of my favorite players when he was a young Erik Karlsson. He'd be leading the rush. And then I'm like, how did he defend that play? He started the play on the other side. That's what Lane Hudson's doing a whole lot. And I think that's the things that you can take away from him. It's not about being the first on the ice of practice. It's not about doing 2 extra hours, because that doesn't work for everybody. It's the work ethic, game in and game out. There was not one game where I was like, ooh, Lane's energy was off. Lane's hustle was off. No, he may have made mistakes. He may not have been perfect, but he never took a night off. He has not taken a night off in the National Hockey League yet.